Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council. Mayor, Skip Henderson. City Manager, Isaiah Hughley. Pops Barnes, District 1. Glenn Davis, District 2. Bruce Huff, District 3. Toya Tucker, District 4. Charmaine Crabb, District 5. Gary Allen, Mayor Pro Tem and District 6.
Joanne Kogel, District 7.
Walker Garrett, District 8. Judy Thomas, Post 9 at-large counselor.
Tyson Bagley, Post 10, at-large counselor.
Sandra Davis, Clerk of Council.
And City Attorney Clifton Fay. Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council.
Welcome to the November 14th City Council meeting. We will begin this meeting as we begin all of our council meetings, that is by invoking God's presence. I'd like to invite Pastor and former City Councilor Wayne Anthony to the podium. He's representing today St. Peter United Methodist Church, Columbus.
Thank you, Skip. Mr. Mayor, we appreciate all of you and your service to our community. During the month of November, we at our church give thanks for the different groups in our community that make a difference in our everyday lives. Instead of focusing on things, we focus on all the good people that make a difference. And elected officials is one of those groups. And so we want to pray. And then be mindful that halfway around the world, things are in absolute chaos. And our ability to sit here in this place has been paid by others who've come before us. So let us pray. Oh God, thank you for your presence here in this place and in the lives of every person here. Thank you for these who are willing to give of their time, talent, energies, and effort to make Columbus and surrounding area a better place to live and work, play, and pray. We pray for your divine blessing as they deliberate. Bless them and their families. Bless them in their energy and effort and encouragement. Pour out your wisdom and your guidance as this City Council deliberates to make Columbus a better place. We pray it in your name. Amen.
Wayne, thank you. And appreciate what you do. Wayne is heading up the Council of Clergy that we're putting together to try to have an impact on a number of different social issues throughout our community, and I appreciate his willingness to step up. He's done that before, I think, in a role under Mayor Reichert, previous mayor of Macon, and we're looking forward to good things. Thank you. All right, if you would, please stand and join me in a pledge to our flag. All right, first order of business, approve the minutes from the November 7 meeting. Motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any edits, any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Are there any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Got a couple of proclamations today. The first one, Councilor Barnes will present to the United Advanced Practice Registered Nurses of West Georgia. I know Ms. Padgett is here, and would you and your contingent want to come up to the podium, please, ma'am?
Nurse practitioners on the vanguard of the community's health. And as always, it is my pleasure when I see nurses, nurse practitioners to read a proclamation. I love to read proclamations anyway, but particularly for healthcare. And so this proclamation reads thusly. It says, whereas nurse practitioners play a critical role as trusted providers of health care for patients in our state, and whereas nurse practitioners work to expand healthcare access in underserved communities, promote health equity in care, and improve health outcomes for all, Whereas patients depend on the more than 355,000 licensed nurse practitioners in the United States and the 7,690 in the state of Georgia as of 2019 to diagnose, manage, and treat their chronic and acute healthcare conditions. And whereas nurse practitioners provide high-quality primary, acute, and specialty healthcare services while emphasizing health promotion, disease prevention, health education, and counseling, guiding patients to make smarter health and lifestyle choices every day. And whereas better utilization of nurse practitioners through modernized state laws and improved policies creates better health through a more accessible, efficient, cost-effective, and high-quality healthcare system. And whereas nurse practitioners serve as the providers of choice for many Columbus, Georgia residents and play a pivotal role in the health and welfare of our communities. And whereas Columbus, Georgia is proud to recognize and honor the service of nurse practitioners of our state. Now, therefore, the Honorable Mayor of Columbus, Georgia, B.H. Skip Henderson III, does hereby proclaim November 12th to the 18th as Nurse Practitioner Week in the city of Columbus, Georgia. Well deserved.
Thank you, Pop, so much, and we'd like to appreciate the City Council. I'd like to just speak for all of our local nurse practitioner group here in Columbus. We appreciate your unanimous decision in helping us with our legislative efforts to go forward in 2024 that will help expand the scope for our entire nurse practitioner, not only here in Columbus, but in Georgia as a whole. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If you would, kind of tell us who you are. Give us your name and where you work.
My name is Pamela Shaw. I work at New Horizons Behavioral Health, and I've been there for about 13 years.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Chandler Padgett. I'm an assistant professor at Columbus State University and also work at Studio Aesthetics. I would love for everyone to introduce themselves, and then at the end, I'd love to also give a brief overview of the 4 bills that we're so grateful for your support in.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Gwendolyn Miller. I work at Columbus State University. I'm the FNP coordinator of our FNP program. I also work at Uptown Pediatrics, and I've been doing this since 2013.
Good morning, and thanks also for your support of our FNP program here locally, of our UAPRN group, and of nurse practitioners here in Georgia and their ability to practice. I'm Dr. Tammy Condry. I'm the director of the School of Nursing at Columbus State University.
Hey, good morning. I'm Dr. Amy Vale. I'm the Assistant Director of Graduate Programs in the School of Nursing at Columbus State University, and I also practice at Uptown Pediatrics here in Columbus.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Denatra Gilliard, Associate Professor with Augusta University in Augusta, Georgia. I practice in the HIV clinic at the Columbus Health Department. Thank you for your support.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Crittenden. I am a Purdue graduate nursing student off of the Psychiatric Mental Health Nurse Practitioner Program. Thank you.
Dr. Padgett, you want to make a comment or two?
Thank you. So again, we are so grateful on behalf of UAPRN, Columbus State University, all the APRNs in the Columbus area and the state of Georgia for your unanimous support of these 4 proposed pieces of legislation that will be introduced in the General Assembly in session 2024. One of the bills is Senate Bill 164. This provides a licensure rather than an authorization to practice for APRNs in the state of Georgia. So currently, as you all know, we practice with an authorization under our RN license, and this bill, if passed, will allow us to practice under a license separate from our RN license. The second bill is House Bill 557. This is multifaceted. This not only addresses the ability to prescribe Schedule II medications under certain conditions, such as the provider having greater than a year of practice, the patient being 18 years of age or older, and so on and so forth. There are conditions, but this does allow APRNs the ability to prescribe Schedule II medications. In addition to that, this bill also allows APRNs to prescribe handicap placards on a temporary or permanent basis for individuals, constituents in our communities who are in need of a handicap placard. Now, believe it or not, the state of Georgia is one of only 2 states that does not allow APRNs to prescribe handicap placards, and also one of only 2 states that does not allow APRNs to prescribe Schedule II medications at all. So passing this bill would allow Georgia, again, to be able to step up to the plate and compete with these other states as well. Most importantly, allowing our patients, allowing our constituents, allowing individuals in the community the ability to access of care. The next bill is House Bill 291. This is a legal guardian bill and would allow APRNs, PAs, clinical nurse specialists, therapists, things like that, individuals like that, to be able to appoint a legal guardian for an individual if needed. And finally, last but not least, thank you for your support in previous House Bill 430. Now this House bill allowed APRNs to authorize home health. So we just want to thank you for your support in all of these bills. We want to promote advocacy among the constituents, individuals in the room today, as well as individuals at home, to contact your state elected officials, your senators, and your representatives. You can do this by going to www.openstates.org and advocate for these 4 bills as well. Thank you all so much.
And I'd like to thank you, Chandler. I'd like to make a comment. And I would like to thank this council for their vote, because there's something in this proclamation that stands out, where it says better utilization of nurse practitioners through modernized state laws and improved policies. You see individuals who go beyond the BSN level, years of schooling, and people are living longer. And the emphasis now on disease prevention, new model here now. And with the help of these professionals, that's possible. And so I just want to thank this council here for voting unanimously to increase the scope of practices, but also, if a plumber has a license, an electrician should not, nurse practitioners that go years beyond the BSN level, just out of a courtesy, and physician assistants have their own. So I want to thank this council for that, because it's well-deserving for these professions.
Well, Chandler, I want to thank you and the others that were present. I know the luncheon that you hosted for our state delegation, they had a lot of their questions answered and some of their thoughts reinforced, and we appreciated being involved in that. So thank you for what you do. If you would come by, and let us thank you, and I've got a copy of the proclamation. I'll let you give yours out to them. Thank you. Yes, good to see you. Hey, yes, ma'am. Thank y'all. Nice to see you again. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for what you do. Yes, ma'am. It's good to see you again. Thank you so much for what y'all do. Thank you for being here. Thank you, sir. All right. Next proclamation we have is going to be presented by Councilor Garrett. It is going to be accepted by Malone Moore for the George Walton Chapter, National Society of Daughters of the American Revolution, the American Indians Committee. I think November is Indigenous Peoples Month. I'll spit it out. Easy for you to say, right?
Good morning. My name is Malone Moore, and I am here to recognize National Native American and Indigenous Peoples Month.
See, I knew it was something like that.
See? And we recognize the invaluable contributions of Native peoples that have shaped our country and honor hundreds of tribal nations who continue exercising their inherent sovereignty as vital members of the overlapping system of governments in the United States.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilor Garrett has a proclamation to present to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure to read the proclamation into the record. Whereas the history and culture of our great nation have been significantly influenced by American Indians and indigenous peoples, and whereas the contributions of American Indians have enhanced the freedom, prosperity, and greatness of America today, and whereas their customs and traditions are respected and celebrated as part of a rich legacy throughout the United States, and whereas Native American Awareness Week began in 1976 and recognition was expanded by Congress and approved by President G.W. Bush in August 1990, designating the month of November as National American Indian Heritage Month. And whereas in honor of National American Indian Heritage Month, community celebrations as well as numerous cultural, artistic, educational, and historical activities have been planned. Now therefore, B.H. Skip Henderson III, Mayor of Columbus, Georgia, does hereby proclaim November 2023 as National American Indian Heritage Month.
Thank you, ladies. And would you introduce yourself too?
My name's Mary Beth Barnello.
Okay.
And I'm the newest member of George Walton chapter, and I'm very happy.
Well, fantastic. And thank you for the chapter for continuing to promote and celebrate the month of November in such a way. Any other comments?
Pretty much that I'm just glad to accept this and honor the Native Americans who were our first Americans. So.
Absolutely. If you would, come around and let us thank you, and I've got a proclamation to present. All right, we'll move on to the city attorney's agenda. The city attorney.
Okay, Mayor, thank you. Got a very short business agenda today. We'll run through it. The first item up, we need a vote on the promotion sergeant amendment for CPD.
There's a motion second to approve item 1. Any discussion? Chris, if you'd put it on the screen, councilors, please enter your votes. That's unanimous. It approved.
All right, next item, we need a vote on the senior living facilities. Residents can possess alcohol and carry it to locations that serve or sell.
Motion second to approve. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, Chris, please put that up there. Thank you. Councilors, if you would enter your votes. And that passes.
All right, and then our last item is a zoning public hearing. This would rezone property at 301 42nd Street from light manufacturing to single-family residential. It's recommended for approval. Mr. Singh is here. Hang on just a second, sir, and we'll see if they got any questions around the table. Any questions on this petition? Okay, does anybody else in the audience want to comment for or against? Okay, we'll take a vote on this December 5th at 9 o'clock meeting. Mr. Singh, if you want to come back then, you can. They'll vote on December 5th. All right. Thank you, sir. That's the business agenda, Mayor, and no requests for any executive session. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Mr. City Manager, your agenda, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a few items. The first two items are Georgia DOT grants. The first one is Y410 funds. It's a $9,153.81 grant. And
Motion second to approve accepting the grant. Any discussion? Chris, if you'd put it on the screen. Counselors, you can vote. That's approved.
And the next one is a $332,340.54.
All right, motion second to approve that grant. Any discussion? Hearing none, Chris, please put it on the screen. And if you'd finish explaining, I think, at least what our contribution is.
Yeah, that's a 20% match for that $332,000 grant. It's $83,085, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Next, I've got Dero Fix-It Station donation.
All right, there's a motion and a second to approve. Counselor Crabb to the motion.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
When we accept these donations, do we have anything in the agreements about the maintenance of them and if they're damaged, the removal of them?
I don't know that we have anything in the agreement that references damage and or removal.
I would like to see that in there because I don't want, I mean, these are great to have, but if they get damaged or what's happened at one of these near my home on Manchester Expressway, the tools get removed from them and then they're just sitting there, they're not functioning, they become, they'll clutter the trail. And so I would like, you know, that the agreement is that Dragonfly would either maintain them or the city will remove them if they become damaged and unusable.
Well, and I think certainly we can work with the city attorney's office to make sure that we have some clause when we receive a donation that we clarify that.
Thank you.
And so we'll work with the city attorney's office on that. But the value of this is $1,925, and it's for bicycle repairs for the Dragonfly Trail from River Valley Regional Commission, Bicycle Columbus, and Dragonfly Trails, Inc.
Okay.
And it is a donation.
There is a motion and a second to accept it. Any further discussion? All right, if you put it on the screen, Chris, please. Councilors, you can vote. And that's approved, and we'll get that through the city attorney's office, Counselor.
Next is a Columbus Police Department donation acceptance. It's $6,000.
All right, there's a motion and a second to approve $6,000 donation to CPD. Any discussion? All right, Chris, you put it on the screen.
And these funds will be used just to support the police department. We've got a
All right, it's motion second to approve two Homeland Security grants. Any discussion on either one of those items? All right, we'll take a voice vote since there's multiple. All in favor say aye. Any opposed?
So the first one is $15,000 for new rescue equipment, and there is no match. And the second one is $38,335 for new hazmat equipment, and there is no match. And so I've got a few purchases. I've got key control management cabinet system for the Muscogee County Prison.
Motion and second to approve the key control management cabinet system for the prison. Any discussion? Okay, are you amending the motion to include B through F as well? All right, so there's a motion and a second to approve A through D and F. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right. Council, if you would cover all of them, but
Yeah,
then.
Sure. So A is a key control management cabinet for the Muscogee County prison, allows for key control management out there. B is historic bus exterior restoration. C is ACE in handheld non-contact chemical identifier with accessories for fire EMS. And I really thought this was something good for them because it will enhance their ability, the department's current hazardous material team, by adding opioid detection capabilities amongst other things. But I thought it was really a good deal. And then we've got a 2024 Ford 250 truck for the prison. And then F would be upgrade or replacement of existing equipment for CCGTV. Item E, we had some discussion last week about the sheriff and his agreement with the private schools. And this item E brings to you a movement to start the process of handling public schools. And it's an agreement with the CPD and with the Muscogee County School District. The Red Speed is the vendor, and the same vendor as with the sheriff last week. It's the same vendor. But revenue would be shared with the Columbus Police Department and the Muscogee County School District. They're going to start with 4 and then will progress as CPD and school district work together to get to the other number of districts, school zones in the city. And but they will start with 4 school zones. But the CPD, along with engineering and Homeland Security, worked as a team to select this vendor, and they're moving forward with it. So this is the same company as the sheriff, as you voted to allow the sheriff to move forward with last week. Same company, and they're moving forward with the public school system, starting with 4 school zones.
Which school zones will this include?
I don't believe they've determined the 4. That'll be the CPD and the school district will work together, as I understand it, to identify the 4.
Do you know if they're determining it based on, I guess, like high traffic area, incidents that have occurred in those school zones, like accidents?
I don't know what CPD and school district will. I'm sure they're going to have a team to work together, and I don't think there's a representative from CPD here, but that's something they will work with the school district to determine.
Because at the last council meeting, it made it seem like we was doing it for the entire school district with this RFP. So I just wanted to be able to clarify to the community that it's 4 school zones, and we don't know what school zones nor the criteria that's being actually gathered to determine which ones they are being placed in.
Yeah.
So
that is true. The 4 have, as I understand it, have not been determined. They're going to work with the school district, CPD will, and then after initial locations are deployed, additional locations may be determined by the Columbus Police Department and the Muscogee County School District during the term of the contract. So I don't have a timeline for when they're going to start to grow and to other, once they identify the 4, but during the term of the contract, they will work on locations, the CPD and the school district together.
was it anything in this RFP to say when it will actually be deployed out, like when it would start in those four areas?
You have all the information that I have at this time.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I'm asking,
Yeah.
you know, hoping that you probably have a little more
Well,
than I do.
I don't see a CPD representative here, so it would be something that they are working on.
All right. So to clarify, only 4 school districts.
4 school zones.
Zones. 4 school zones, because that school districts would mean larger. If we was talking about school district, but zones, so the area where the school is. So 4 school zones, we don't know which schools, and basically we don't have any further information except for the money that is, will be collected based on the school zone speeding fines will go between CPD and Muskogee County School District. Just wanted to put that out there to clarify, because we did it, you know, it would have been misleading to say that it was the entire school district at large.
Well, and I think I've had conversations with the school superintendent as well as representatives of the police department. I think the intent is to cover the entire community. But,
At some point.
Yeah, at some point, not all at once. The deployment will begin, and we can bring the contact at CPD in here and just allow them to share with you how they're going to work with the school district at determining which 4 to start with. And my assumption is, based on the communication with the superintendent, is that they'll move immediately towards expanding that. They'll have to come up with some criteria. I'm sure the CPD will do that.
One more question. So revenue will be deposited in general fund. It states towards the end. Is it some statement that states that the revenue will be deposited in general fund and allocated towards Columbus Police Department to be shared between CPD and Muskogee County? Because I don't see it stated in here.
It will go into the general fund, and there is nothing that says that it's going to go directly to CPD from there.
What the code says is that the money should be received by the governing authority. So technically, all of this revenue, whether it's the private schools or the public schools, should come to the governing authority.
Should come. Unless you change that.
And that's in the ordinance?
That's in the state code.
State code.
That says that it should come to the governing authority. But then it also says that money should be restricted for public safety, law enforcement, or public safety initiatives. So we would treat this revenue as we do some of the other monies that we reserve, like all the revenue that we currently receive for Whitewater, we set that aside in a reserve to be used for maintenance and so forth in terms of for the Whitewater the whitewater rafting that's on the river. So we would treat this the same. It would be set aside as reserve funds, and then anytime we utilize reserves, that would require approval by council.
Yeah. Will this be tracked? I'm gonna say Phoenix City, because I think I received like 2 tickets, like since I've been in Columbus, in Phoenix City. But it looks like they keep like a dashboard that shows how much money has been received based on these fines, like I received. But it's a dashboard, and you know how even to the point that citizens in Phoenix City said that they were upset because they felt like they were putting up the speed zones to make revenue, because it was like millions of dollars being made on just a couple. But you saw exactly in run red lights. But you saw exactly what was being what revenue was being brought in by these devices. So I just wanted to see, are we gonna get that type of update just like we do with our monthly snapshot? Like,
Sure.
You track it by fund anyway, right?
Well, it's gonna be in the general fund. We track it by revenue code. We
Yeah.
set up a specific revenue code just for this, just for these fines. And so, because of that, we're able to track it that way. So it can be added most certainly to the snapshot.
I think that'll be good. That way, definitely provide those numbers to the citizens, and
Yep.
I think it'll be a real good tool. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilor Thomas?
Excuse me, I was in a meeting yesterday, excuse me, with Chief Mathis, and they talked about this program. And ultimately, the goal is every school in the district will have these cameras. They currently, I'm sorry, excuse me, they currently have I believe they call it the flock cameras, something along that line, where they can look at any traffic that goes through. But this is one of those things that I think if we could do, as you were saying, have a revenue, a line in the general fund, similar to what we do with the OLOST. When we put the OLOST in place, we were told by the state, it's sales tax, and so you have to put it in the general fund. And the council said, but let's keep track of it. Let's keep it in a separate line item on the budget. And we could do that with this money also. But the ultimate goal is that every school zone in the district will have these cameras. And one of the things that the chief said yesterday was, once these cameras go into effect, there is a reduction by about 90% of the number of people who are speeding through school zones because they get a ticket, and you cannot renew your tag if you've not paid this ticket. So he said it's a great way to help pull that down, and I can't wait for him to get it throughout the entire district. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. Along the same lines of the discussion, last week we talked about the cameras going in the private school areas, and we were unclear on how those funds would be sent to the city. I understand that you say it's coming deposited to the general fund. Have we cleared that up? I think we asked for the sheriff to be here today, or some representative to clarify that.
Well, you did ask, and I think she's read what's in state law or code, and that's how we intend to handle it.
I can get with the sheriff in terms of making sure that, we receipt these monies into the appropriate place.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to make sure the contracts,
Well,
the wording is the same as the one that we're signing.
Well, she'll get with the sheriff, and if there is a difference of opinion, then we'll let you know, but we intend to follow what the law says.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Councilor Davis?
Thanks, Mayor. And in line with this this initiative and just wanting to highlight again on the conversation here, I've received a lot of calls from people just concerned about appropriate signage, being in the right places when this initiative is implemented. And I believe that it is, what I'm telling people is that there has to be proper signage, that those cameras cannot be turned on, the whole program cannot be implemented unless the signage is there, that people are aware of it, they know it. So, there won't be an argument that, I got a ticket, but I wasn't aware that this was a zone being monitored by cameras, or that there was some kind of radar established here that in turn caused me to receive a ticket because I was speeding. So, that's my understanding that
I think
the
they-
signage needs to be there.
I think they even send out like warnings the first time. They don't try to just start, telling people, mail in your check. The first time you go through and that occurs, you get a warning. So
And that's good, but those are the calls that I'm receiving from citizens about just making sure that there's proper signage and the appropriate signage. in those
I think
places.
the bottom
Yeah,
line
and-
is, there's a school
And
zone
we asked that
flashing
question,
light.
I believe,
They should
to
know
the Congress.
that that's where you slow down.
You're right about the signage, and I know the deputy city manager is working with Georgia DOT on the River Road, because it's a state road, but yeah, the signage. And then, as the mayor indicated, I think the first is scheduled to be a warning. And, but I don't think we're gonna have anything to worry about, because word's gonna get out. It will be on social media and everywhere, because, I was talking to the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem yesterday. Word will get out, because there's gonna be some tickets going, flying everywhere.
Yep. And keep in mind that these tickets are issued, the speed limit's 25 in a school zone for the most part, some are 20. And if you have to be doing over 11 miles over the speed limit for it to trigger this type of process anyway. Council Tucker?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that we add, the request to the referral list, regarding this, item. I'm up here trying to,
Revenue?
yeah, the automated speed detection to the referral list. And just list that, we requested the, revenue line, and also what you mentioned in reference to, putting in a separate, I guess, account or, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Just so we can track what we're doing.
I got you.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's all the questions. So is there a motion to approve E? Motion and a second to approve E under the purchases. Any more discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right,
And
it's approved.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just received a note that the sheriff was not aware, no one directly requested that he be here today, and so that's why he's not here, but he's always happy to come.
Okay.
Mayor, I've got one update.
Did we do B?
Pardon?
Was B approved? I thought B was pulled.
No, E was pulled.
E.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And so I've got one update today, business license, lockbox update, Finance Director Angelica Alexander.
Counselor, we did? Yeah. Counselor Begley?
As we get into the updates and presentations, I know we've still got several items on the referral list for integrated waste. Do you know a timeline of when we can expect to hear an update on those items?
Integrated waste is coming December 5th.
Okay.
Is that right? December 5th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good morning again.
Good morning.
So I just wanted to provide a very, very quick update in terms of a process change that the first of its kind, I should say, since we implemented a lockbox process, I would say over almost 20 years ago. But we were notified in June of 2022 by the bank. Our bank is currently Synovus Bank, of a potential change in their lockbox operations. They delayed that implementation on multiple occasions. I think more so it was, they needed to work out some things internally in terms of the transition. There were some software integrations that needed to happen in terms of our online banking application. But in August of 2023, so just a few months ago, they notified us that they were ready to move forward with that change in the lockbox process. Again, for those that don't know, a lockbox for us is where you send your occupation tax returns to. So if you have a business license in Columbus and we've sent you out an occupation tax return for you to process a renewal, when you mail that back to us, the mailing address that's listed on that return is to our lockbox. So in August of 2023, they notified us that they would be fully migrating their lockbox process to a third-party vendor. They would no longer have a local lockbox here in Columbus. We're actually the last customer of theirs to migrate to this new lockbox process. So all the people that have a lockbox with Synovus Bank, they've already gone on to this new process, and CCG is the last customer to make this migration. So effective November 20th of this year, so next week, next Monday actually, the mailing address for business license renewals will change. The address that's listed here, of course, you would make all payments still payable to the Columbus Consolidated Government, but the address now is P.O. Box 96568, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28296-0568. So this address will be printed again on the occupation tax returns after the go-live date. We're in the process of updating our tax return templates, be it online or in our system application. We're going to prepare a special insert to send out with those occupation tax renewal packets that we send out in January, February timeframe. We're also going to place some verbiage on the city's website as well as on the finance department website to advise our citizens, our businesses of the new lockbox address.
So it may appear strange that you're sending your check to North Carolina for the Columbus Consolidated Government. It's not a scam. It's a change.
It's a change in the process of the bank.
In the process, and so we need to get that word out. We want you to know. It may appear strange that I'm going to send this to you to a North Carolina address. So we just want to be clear.
All right, Counselor Begley.
To clarify, so we are with the exact same bank, but our bank has now outsourced to a third party.
That's correct.
Have they provided reassurances you're going to get the same level of?
They provided reassurances to us because I can tell you, we were very hesitant to make the change. I think part of the delay in us being the last customer to make this migration for them was that they were very cognizant of our concerns. And so they have taken the extra step in terms of making sure that the mail gets to where it needs to go. They've offered to hand carry the mail for the first 3 months post go live. They've offered to hand carry the mail to that new facility, that new location in North Carolina. So they're gonna keep that same local P.O. box open, and they're gonna take it. If it comes to that local P.O. box, they're gonna hand carry it to North Carolina for processing. After the, and I'm not sure if I've answered your other question, but after the first 3 months post go live, they're going to, again, keep that same P.O. box open for us for an additional 12-month period. So in totality, we'll have 15 months of mail forwarding basically, but after the first 3 months, it's gonna be forwarded to the new address by the United States Postal Service.
And to use a different lockbox provider, would that require us to change banks?
To have a different lockbox address would require us to change banks. But I believe in our conversations with this particular banks, a lot of the larger banks, they utilize a third party to process and handle their lockbox. Is what they told us. And So they're just sort of getting up with the times and closing down their local lockbox operation. Before, when it was done here locally, there was a location in Columbus that we would physically go to and pick up that mail.
And so, if this is consistent, are other communities in Georgia also sending their payments to another state?
Yes, for Synovus, you had the choice of utilizing North Carolina, Tampa, Florida, or Atlanta. Now, you say, well, why not Atlanta? It was their recommendation to not utilize Atlanta because they're having a lot of problems with the mail with the Atlanta processing center. And not more so with the bank, but with the Postal Service. They were giving us examples where, the mail was delayed several months after it had been received. It didn't actually make it to where it was supposed to go at the end of it all for several months. So, obviously we didn't want that to occur for us.
And then last question, did they provide an estimate of the new costs to receive the paperwork?
No estimates at this time, because it's really going to be based on the carrier. The city has an account with UPS, and so we're going to utilize the account that we have with UPS. From a logistics standpoint, obviously it's going to be based on the volume, the weight of the mail that they're going to ship back to us, but we don't have an estimate at this time.
Yeah, okay, so it's not like individual mailings, it is literally the box of paperwork they received, sending it back to us. We have it for our records. Got
Yes,
it. Okay.
boxes.
That was it, thank you.
All right, Counselor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, in concern of processing of documents out of the Revenue Department, I would think that, that it could be considered premature in making decisions like this, knowing that we have an internal audit, that we have investigation with an auditing aspect of the investigation, which will be presented soon, and we'll have recommendations, findings, and possible solutions, and we don't know what is being determined and what's going to be presented to us, okay? But in light of that, what I'm reading here is this is a matter that, or what I'm comprehending here is that this is a matter that's been going on for a while, and evidently with the timeline recently, the bank has asked you to make this transition. You've got to do something. You got to do something to keep things moving. We don't have any other alternative. That's the way I'm looking at this and reading it. So I think that the aspect that anyone would question that this would be premature before that happens would be exactly that answer, that this is the only option I'm looking at, the only option that the city has right now.
Yes, this is beyond my control. I asked if it could even be pushed to January, and they have said no.
Well, could this be termed an emergency? If we were to have to make a decision, if we didn't have another option at this point, and we wouldn't have to go, the city wouldn't have to go through an RFP process?
Well, if you're talking about switching banks, that is a huge lift, because that's not that's not something that we could turn around fairly quickly.
No, I'm just asking if could it be deemed an emergency, and you wouldn't have to go. The RFP process would hold this up for a long period if you would have to go back out and identify another option to deal with this matter. Correct?
So you mean an emergency to switch banks and just?
Well, to find an option to keep the process continuing and to streamline to have the process continued in a timely manner.
This is beyond our control. This is a business decision that the bank has made, and they have worked with us. I won't say worked with. They have. They've delayed implementation as far as they could delay it. And at this point, they are, you know, they have worked with us in terms of us, this being delayed, and we're at the point now where, they're at the point now where they can no longer further delay it. We are the last customer of theirs that is utilizing, they're keeping an entire lockbox operation center open for the city. And they have got to close it down at this point, according to them.
If the reports come back and there's recommendations to maybe look at other options, is this gonna be a temporary option that's on the table, moving to this third-party processing group out of North Carolina, or is the city, does the city have the ability to make the changes to potentially use a different option?
And so the agreement that we have with the bank, is this a component that could be removed from this bank and yet we stay with this bank? We take the lockbox system to another lending institution? I don't know. I mean, it's something certainly we could.
I think you end up with the same results, and that is a change in the processing of those pieces of mail. And I think that what I understood is the bank's making this change. We didn't get a vote, and so what's going to happen is it's going to change the processing location. Now, we could change, to your question, if we decided we wanted to pull our business from that bank and go with someone that has a lockbox that, for whatever reason, we're more comfortable with. But I think this is not something that we're doing. It's sort of happening to us.
Right, that's the conversation here. I think what I'm asking is, could this be deemed, if another option is recommended for the department to improve the process, could you get out of this?
I'm sure we can get out of any agreement, city attorney.
Could you, to keep it moving, could it be deemed an emergency to keep it moving to bypass the RFP process? RFP process is gonna just, spread this thing out, and it's not gonna be streamlined. You're gonna have a large gap that will be, that will cause a significant delay.
Well,
You follow me?
It's more than just a lockbox, though, in terms of our relationship with this particular.
It's a package.
Yeah, it's a processing of documents, yeah.
Well, it's more than just the agreement that we have with the bank. It's more than just them handling this lockbox. That's just a part of it. Part of the RFP that we put out, we have to have a certain number of locations. The bank needs to have a certain number of locations within the city so that we can make so that the various departments can make those deposits into. I mean, we don't want a situation where we have one bank and everybody goes to one bank. They have to drive, all the way across town just to make a deposit. So that's part of the process in terms of the RFP. Not only that, a lot of the other processing, such as, the deposits that we make, the direct deposits that we send out, those are all negotiated as part of the RFP. But if it sort of calms some of your concern, Councilor Davis, this particular agreement ends in January. So we're supposed to, we are in the process of potentially putting out an RFP to solicit these services. Again, anyway, our 5-year agreement with Synovus.
If there's another option on the
If there's
table.
another option. We're going to put out another RFP.
To keep that delay, I guess let's focus, there would be a delay. If you did that, there would be a delay unless you can keep this service going up until that point. But it's gonna be confusing. Well, all I'm asking is, could you deem it an emergency that you could make a decision to move to a lockbox, a different lockbox location, or a different service that could keep things moving in a timely manner so the businesses get the documents they need to operate, and everybody, it keeps it moving. So right now, one of the concerns is that the gap in these delays and people not receiving proper documents to keep their businesses going. So I guess what I'm asking is if you could do it as an emergency, can that keep it going? I'm just looking ahead right now, and I'm asking these questions.
So,
Well, the benefit of having a lockbox with the bank that you're doing business with is that when they make a deposit into your account, it goes to your account with them.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that. I said, look, the way I
So
look
if
at
in
it, the
terms of-
bank's not doing this business anymore. They're turning it over to a third-party processing company that we have no other choice. That's what we're talking about. That we have no other option right now. All I'm asking that if we get to the point in the recommendations and the findings that come back, present other options or solutions that we might need to look at, are we able to make a transition with a alternative option or to go in a different direction? Can we do that without creating a delay and to keep it on a timely fashion and moving along?
well,
The
and
only
if
other
that,
option,
but if that happens, there would be a transition period. In other words.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yes, but we can
I
do
mean,
that, right? That's all I'm asking.
I think certainly we can.
We're not
I
getting
mean,
locked into a
without-
long-term relationship.
Well, we're in the relationship now.
Well, a
and-
long-term
and-
contract with a third-party vendor.
Well, for us, we're not signing a new agreement. This is still the same agreement that we've been operating under. They have just changed a location. The agreement has not changed. And so, based on what I'm hearing you say, if some finding comes back that says you shouldn't use a lockbox or you should use some other method, then it would be effective July 1st. I'm just throwing that out. We will be transitioning from this system to this system, and we work to prepare for that smooth transition.
And we can have the confidence that it can happen in a timely manner. Keep things on track. That's all I'm asking.
We would look at what a smooth, a timeline would be for a smooth transition. Can you do it in 90 days, or will it take, 120 days or 6 months or whatever, I think.
Right, okay.
I think you look at it and you determine, you don't put pressure on you. You see if we can do it in 90 days and do it smoothly, then that's what you do.
Right.
If not, it's gonna be 6 months. That's what we'll do.
So you haven't got to that point to determine that?
Well, we haven't got, we're not at the point that we're talking about changing vendors yet.
Well, we are changing vendor. We're moving to a third party. I mean,
Well,
because of
a
decision.
Put that address up there.
We're not. They've
What's the
selected
address?
a different vendor.
We are dealing with, when you mail this, you're mailing it to Columbus Consolidated Government at that address, but in North Carolina, is that a Synovus property, or is it?
It's a third-party group.
it's a third party.
It's third party.
That's what I'm saying. So they're getting out, I take it as they're getting out of the business and they're moving it to somebody else to do the business.
But we're
for
not
them.
signing an agreement with the third party. Our agreement remains with and under Synovus, so we.
Right, that's our RFP, but we have no choice in this situation. That was not a part of the original RFP.
Well, the original RFP is that they would provide lockbox
Yeah.
services.
And
This
they do
is
it.
a matter, as I said before, as the circumstances happen, we have no control on it. We just have to
Yeah,
move to keep things
that's
going.
right.
And then I'm
But-
asking if we keep things going, if there's another option that we want to move to improve, continuous improvement, that we can do that and streamline it and do it in a timely.
I think we can.
Well, from a continuous
All right,
improvement option.
okay.
Yeah.
I'll go to my second question. My
Okay.
second question, can you assure the citizens, based on what they're experiencing now in the processing, okay, and not receiving their documents, can you assure them that moving now long distance versus local? So right now, all the transactions are happening local, but this is gonna be long distance, and there's gonna be mail involved and other things, and probably electronic processing, automation, things like that. Can you assure the citizens that there's not gonna be any hiccups or any glitches where it will further delay the process and businesses getting their appropriate documents to keep going.
As far as receiving documents or mailing documents? I'm
I'm
unclear.
talking about we're making a move from doing things local.
Right?
We have no choice, we
That
gotta do it.
They're mailing to us,
Well, they're mailing in North Carolina, and North
Right.
Carolina's gonna mail it back to us.
right?
Okay, so in that, now it's a long-distance relationship, let's just say a long-distance transaction.
Mhm.
During that period, can you assure the citizens, do y'all have confidence that there won't be any further delays or that it's gonna create further delays in the timeliness of processing here local, out of the revenue department, to get people what they need, their proper documents to do business and all? You're not gonna come back to us and say there's further delays on this later because we're dealing with a group out of North Carolina. That's what I'm asking.
Right, I honestly cannot make those assurances to you.
Yep.
But the only thing that I can say is that I've been assured by the bank that the process, the transition in this process will be seamless to us. That's why it has taken so long for them to make this migration for us. They've worked with us, you know, they've made sure that the software that we currently see looks and feels exactly the same on this new platform. So as far as that's concerned, I've been assured by the bank, you know, in terms of us transitioning to this new platform, that it will function just as it does now. In terms of any other delays, you know, obviously I don't control the postal service, so I can't really make those assurances to you.
What I can, what I think what we can assure you, if we see that that's occurred, we will take immediate action to identify a solution, whether it's deal with the agreement that we have and do something local, I don't know. But we will monitor that, and if we see that there is a difference in, if there are additional delays, we need to do something.
Well, and look, I'm asking these questions because these are the questions that are gonna be out in the community that we're gonna have to address and that the city's gonna have to address. Now, Glenn Davis, the way I feel about it is we have a very good relationship with a local bank, a proven bank, that we have confidence in, and they provide good services for us. And if they're using a third-party vendor, I would think I could have confidence that it's a very solid company and they've probably been doing business for a while, and they know how to do this, and those things are not gonna happen. You can trust that. But, you know, based on where we're at today and what we know and what we're learning, I mean, we just need to make sure that we're doing business in a timely manner and that we're not incurring more delays that seems to be at the forefront right now of what we're dealing with.
Understand, and we all know that Synovus is a very high-performing, reputable organization. And if they see that there are delays, if we communicate that to them, I'm sure they would take immediate action to deal with it.
Okay.
Because they're just that kind of company.
Thank you.
Right, I just want to get that out to the citizens so they can have confidence in that.
Sure.
Good.
Counselor Kogle.
If we've known, so I guess we've known about this impending change for 12, 14 months. So have we been able to put in some standard operating procedures on how, I guess that's just playing off of Counselor Davis's comment. Have we been able to come up over the last year with some standard operating procedures on how we're gonna handle that, those boxes of paperwork that's coming back from North Carolina? I'm assuming that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that businesses mail their checks to and their paperwork to North Carolina. North Carolina processing deposits them, correct?
Deposits the
And
check.
then takes the paperwork and then boxes that all up on whatever that schedule may be, whether that's a week schedule or 2 week schedule, month. Do we know what the schedule is on that? Are they doing it daily or, because I think at the last meeting you said that it took sometimes 4 to 5 months to process, or weeks to process a business license. Are we adding on, are we adding on 5 days? Are we adding on a week? Are we adding on a month to their collection? Do we know that? Are they mailing, like if myself and Counselor Tucker mail their business license in, are they gonna receive it on September 1st and then mail it back on September 2nd? Or are they gonna box them up and mail them at the end of the week or at the end of the month or bi-weekly? Do we know?
Well, in terms of the frequency, I mean, they could send it daily if that's what we were willing to pay for. In terms of shipment of the actual paperwork. Typically, as far as we're concerned, the process will remain the same as it did here in terms of when we receive it. Instead of us, the only change is we're not physically going to the lockbox processing center, 2, 3, 4 times a week to pick up the paperwork. They're going to ship it to us. And again, as far as the frequency, that's just something that we'll have to really sort of work out. Because I wouldn't say that it's something that needs to be done daily, because I don't want to pay for a package and when it could all be bundled in the same box if we'd have waited a day or so. But as far as internal processes for us, it would remain the same. Nothing would change for us internally. I mean, once we receive the mail in-house, we catalog it based on the date that it was received, and that would remain the same for us internally. So that's not going to change or impact the processing time. The only thing, that I am a little concerned about is if it gets hung up, in the mail in terms of the postal service, which is why North Carolina was selected as opposed to Atlanta. The bank recommended that we not utilize Atlanta.
So are we prepared to, so we were going to lockbox 3 to 4 times a week? Is that ish?
Mm-hmm.
So are we prepared to have bulk business license come in then?
It was bulk, it was boxes that we would go and pick up when we would go.
Right, but now instead of having boxes every 3 to 4 days, are we prepared to have bulk business licenses come in? So if we're delaying a pickup and having those boxes only come once a week or once every 2 weeks to
It's not gonna
save.
be once every 2 weeks.
Okay, if they're coming every week, but are we prepared to have like a bulk box where we're working through that bulk box as opposed to working through those smaller? I know it's the same amount of business licenses that are coming in, but it's if that box doesn't get finished and we have another box. I mean, I look at if my kid's room is not clean, then it compounds and compounds and compounds and compounds.
Yeah, nothing for us would change internally. It would remain the same, as opposed to us physically going and picking up these mail crates or these boxes of paperwork. They're going to be shipped to us.
So what percentage of what you process comes through lockbox?
A large percentage, I would say maybe 60% of what we receive comes through the lockbox.
So is there a this may be a little too forward thinking, but is there not a company or is there not a way, instead of mailing and doing this by hand, to have a company or an RFP out there with a company that scans those documents and sends them digitally?
They are scanned.
Okay.
We will have access to them digitally as well. The reason why we need the paperwork back is sometimes scan quality isn't that great. If sometimes people fill out those tax returns in pencil. If they fill it out in pencil, it doesn't matter how you scan it, it's just not going to show up to where it's really that legible. So we need that paperwork back in front of us so that we can process the return. But they are, we will have access to this information digitally. That was part of the delay, was making sure that their online platform was set up in such a way that it was seamless to us, that it would that we could access the information the same way that we do now.
So we're processing business licenses while they're being mailed. We have the ability to do that? To start, if they're scanned in, do we have the ability to start that business license process when they're scanned in, or are we waiting for those boxes to come in to double check them?
Well, we're not waiting for the boxes to come in, so to speak. The boxes come in, or the mail comes in, and we process the mail as it's received, but our first priority is the people that's in front of us, right? So as we process through the mail, we're gonna process it as it comes in. If it's a situation where we get to the point to where the mail isn't coming in as frequently, we could process based on that digital scan. We absolutely could. If it's, fully legible and all of the information that they were supposed to send to us has been provided for us to process. So in terms of continuous process improvements, one of the things that I talked about at the last meeting was automation, us going online. And in terms of any recommendations, I would imagine that would be part of it. And that is something that we have been working on and we're still working towards. The only other option, if we don't send it to a lockbox address for processing, is for it to all come to the city. And if you do that as an option, I'm gonna need at least 4 more people full-time to handle the.
Well, even if you don't do that, you need more people.
Well, that too. But if that's really if that was what we chose to do, because it took all that we could to convince them to keep us as a customer, quite honestly. Because typically with the lockbox, it's a coupon system, right? I mean, you mail a payment with a coupon to an address, and it's just they process the coupon, they process the check, and it just goes. For us, with these returns, there's a little bit more of a need for a manual process in that they have to make sure that they are getting the correct document when they process our checks. If they don't, they'll reject it and they'll send it back to us anyway. But lockbox processes are really all about automation, and it's typically a coupon that's being sent in addition to the check. And so we don't have the capacity in-house to handle all of the mail if it was to come to us without additional resources.
So Mayor, but back to Councilor Davis's concern, I would say if we see that the timeline is different, then we will act to determine if there's a better solution.
Well, and our vendor is Synovus. Whatever Synovus does to deliver the services is up to Synovus. They know we'll hold them accountable. And I can't imagine them embarking on a different process that they have not beta tested and made sure that this is operational and will work, just like it always has.
Yes.
So. All right, that's the last question. Go ahead.
Well, that was actually it. I think we've already discussed that slide and in terms of the process, and I'll be happy to answer any additional questions if you have them.
Okay.
That's all I have today, Mayor.
Doesn't look like that. Yeah, Councilor Tucker.
I didn't have a question regarding this, but I did have a question regarding the demolition list. Were we bringing that back on council to get an update on where we are with demoing? Because the last council meeting I had mentioned about Carmel, I think it was Carmel Court, that was removed from the demo list, and now it's in worse shape than it was before. So just trying to see, because it was high up on the demo list, but to see actually the order of those being demoed.
I can certainly have Director Pruitt to come and give an update
So,
on the demolition.
yeah, just want to see, and I'm not sure. He said he was gonna bring it back.
They're telling me the response is in the referral on Carmichael, but I can certainly have him.
So, and I think he was gonna bring it back, so I know, does that have to come through the city attorney to put it back on the demo list, or
So
how?
you're asking it that we bring it,
The actual property, he mentioned that it would be brought, I'm trying to go back to it, cause it was 10, hold on just a second. It's 19. So it's Carmel Court. And what I was asking at that time was, I would like a list of dates for upcoming demolitions that have already been approved. The 1209 Carmel Court was approved to be demoed, but the owner pulled a permit 2 years ago and completed some work, which caused code enforcement to close the demo case. We have since restarted the demolition process on the home in October 2023 due to no more progress being made in the repair process. This home will appear on the next demolition list that appears before council. So my question was,
when's the next list coming?
when is the next list coming? That's number one. And number two, because this was already on the demo list and it has really been kind of one of those nuisance properties, I would like to request that it be put back where it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, and so, let me just have him to do an update on that one on my agenda at the next meeting. And then council can vote or take any action they want at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Cogle?
I know a couple weeks ago I asked for an update on where we were with the audit with animal control. Can we bring that back on December 5th? Those questions, and I don't know I forget what they were off the top of my head. Basically the euthanasia, I think, and I can email them directly to you and CC the rest of the council. But if we could get that update on December 5th, I think after the advisory committee meeting, board meeting this past week, I think that would be very helpful to us as we experience some of that communication from our citizens.
So you want, tell me what you want again, Neil?
We had the animal control audit about 6 months ago, just to see where we're at with those recommendations.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. We can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Davis?
Mr. City Manager, as a referral to add to that, could we get, I'd like to go back a couple years or randomly in the last couple years, some documents on our inspections that come from, I guess it comes from the USDA or the state when they come in and do their audits and inspections of the facilities.
Of animal control?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think those are really important documents that can shed a lot of light to a lot of, you know, the, I guess, stuff that's being said out in the community.
Yeah, I know that we emailed those to some of you, if not all of you. Department of Agriculture on the animal, I think the city attorney's office may have emailed something to them regarding the animal control care audit with all the Department of Agricultural inspections and all of that. But certainly, we will make sure we email them to all of you. But did you want us to do something public?
I would like to get them. I'd like to see them. I think they're important. They're relevant and important in light of conversation.
Yeah, but I do think the city attorney's office emailed something, but we will bring them back. I think it's state laws that we were Mr. City Attorney, I think you did, but when we come back with what Councilor Cogle has asked
Yeah,
for.
we've got,
we'll
we
have
sent it
those.
to Counselor Crabb. If it didn't go to all the counselors, we'll send it to everybody.
Okay. I knew that, I saw something that you sent out, you know, but we'll bring it back.
I do know, it covers a lot of.
It does.
I guess it covers a lot of, areas.
You're right.
Of concern.
Yeah.
But, and am I right to say that usually when those inspections are done, they're unannounced? You don't know when they're coming, or, I mean, the city doesn't know when they're coming or anything. They come and boom, you don't know.
Yeah.
They can come at any time. Am I
Staff-
accurate in saying that?
Staff is saying that's correct.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, we've got all of the audits, inspections from Department of Agriculture. And I know the city attorney will email those to all of you.
And when, if you would too, to add to that, when we do this, if you would maybe highlight or have someone speak to the, when animals are having to be put down or put to sleep, that you would highlight that whole process.
Okay.
That whole process, how it works according to state law, the Animal Protection Acts and things, where, how the veterinarian's involved and other people involved, just so we can get some clarification under that. 'Cause-
Yeah, and I think there's state law that the city attorney sent out, but we'll cover all that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we got you.
Thank you.
Counselor Tucker?
Yes, I think recently the Animal Advisory Board had their meeting.
They
And
did.
is that streamed or is it on our YouTube?
It's recorded and then it's broadcast on CCGTV.
So then is it broadcast on the YouTube channel? It is? Okay,
Yeah,
all right, thank you.
yeah,
Somebody sent something and asked me to watch it. Thank you.
okay.
Counselor Huff?
Yes, Mr. City Manager and Director Short, just wanted to bring to your attention, I was putting my trash out this morning. So you'll be receiving a call from a constituent on Moline Avenue. I'll give you a name after we get off camera. That she had some problems with some trash, but she'll be calling in. And I think one other, not my district, but an associate, a friend, I think it went as far as the mayor's office, maybe on the Sherborne Avenue or Sherborne, came in last week or two. He had some issues for a couple of weeks now with trash and some different things.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Thomas?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if council is interested, but I noticed that Chief Mathis is here if we want him to speak to the issue of the school district cameras while he's here, just to clear up any questions that anybody may have.
We can do that. While he's coming, Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, sir, Mayor. Everybody will check your email from Wednesday, November 8th at 5:33 p.m. You should have gotten all the state laws on animal control, animal cruelty, the regs for Department of Agriculture, animal protection regs, and the inspection sheet from the Department of Agriculture. So everybody should have it on their email. If you didn't, just let us know.
And Mayor, if I may, as the chief prepares to speak, I want him, I don't know if you knew that the red speed, speed detection was on my agenda today for 4 locations, and then additional locations may come later as discussed between CPD and the school district.
Yes, sir.
And so I don't know those 4 locations. And I don't know if you know them at this time, if you've worked with the school district to determine the 4, but that was kind of what we've been talking about today.
Yes, sir. Mayor, council, I apologize. I do not know either.
Yeah, so.
Because we were waiting till the contract or the bid was fulfilled before we actually met with the school. So we're kind of waiting on that. So I don't know the exact locations either.
I didn't think you had determined that, and I shared that with them, but was not 100% that I know that you're scheduled to get together.
Yes, sir.
To determine those locations.
Yes, sir.
And then any additional locations will be a collaboration between you and the school district.
Yes, we'll be adding them as we go along. And although I don't know a lot about the locations here, we've done the same thing in South Fulton just a few years ago. So I understand the process and I understand the idea. I haven't studied the traffic studies yet, but I will be looking at the traffic studies. And it's been so long now, they may have to do some additional traffic studies to determine the exact locations. But the locations will be determined based on the school need, the traffic needs, and the police department's needs.
Well, and you know, just to say, I'm going to assume one will be Steam Mill Road. Yes. Based on the tragedies that have occurred on Steam Mill Road.
I would think so. Counselor Thomas?
Yeah.
Chief, one of part of the conversation we were having here was about how these cameras are going to work in these school districts and so forth. And there were a number of us who had, I think, partial information. But if you could, would you describe what these cameras are going to do and how they're going to function? And, you know, we talked about having a 30-day grace period and so forth. Could you give us a little more information on that?
Yes, ma'am. The way this is going to work is they're going to put these cameras up on both sides of the school system. And it's not just the camera. It's big lighting that's going to blink almost like a school zone that's maybe 2 or 3 times the size of a normal school zone light system. And when someone speeds through there, it's going to take a picture of the back of the car, the tag, and when they get to the other side, it's going to take a picture of the driver that was driving the vehicle. So it's almost undisputable. It takes a really good, clear picture of the driver and the tag. The good thing about this system is when we were looking at the bids, that it integrates with our new Fuchsia system. So it'll integrate with the system that we're already purchasing with the $1.6 million grant that we received from the state.
One of the questions that I had been asked is in Columbus, there are a lot of cars that travel our streets that are from out of state, that have out of state tags, either Alabama or particularly some of those who are stationed at Fort Moore who are from out of state. Does this system track those also?
Yes, it's not a criminal citation that they receive. It's a civil citation. So when they renew their tag, they've got to pay this citation before they can actually renew their tag. And when they set the thing up, we determine how long. We determine if it's 30 days, 45 days, or 60 days of warnings before they start issuing citations. And we'll get together and talk about that. But what happens is in the first 90 days after they start issuing citations, we're going to get a bunch of them. After 90 days, it's going to start dropping off steeply because people are going to realize that they're getting these citations in the mail. And the first ones, I think the first citation that people get is a $25 citation. And if the same person gets caught again, it goes up to a $100 citation. So we determine the amount of time. We also determine the speed. State law says we allow people 11 miles an hour over the speed limit before we write citations. We determine that speed. If we want to go to 12, 13, 14, but in a school zone where we're having some tragic incidents and accidents occur, we probably need to leave it as what the state law requires, and that's 11 miles an hour.
And so if, part of my question is, if I'm driving a car with an Alabama tag on it, this system can find me and send me a citation.
Yes, ma'am, because it's not a state of Georgia issue. They're all over the country, Now, this particular company, I don't know that much about. The company that they had in South Fulton was, I think, Blue Dot or something like that. So I'm not sure about this particular company, but I'm quite sure the information that I read, they work pretty much the same. And when we were doing this bidding process, we specifically wanted a company that integrated with this new Fuchsia system.
Thank you,
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Counselor Kogel?
And just to clarify, the goal is to get this citywide at all, regardless of whether, there's some some school zones, like I can think of Second Avenue, coming over top of the bridge there by downtown elementary, doesn't have a blinking sign. It just has a school zone sign that nobody abides by. And so regardless of whether it has blinking signs or not, our goal is to place this in every
Yes, ma'am.
place.
They will put their own blinking signs up.
Okay.
So it doesn't already have to have existing signs. They will put their own signs up, and they're big.
Okay.
They're hard to miss. So if anybody misses these, and they will, they're gonna complain about the citations at first. Because when these $25 citations come out, and it's got a picture of their tag and a picture of their face on the citation, it's hard to deny that.
All right, any other questions for the chief? Chief Mathis, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
Counselor Davis?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. City Attorney, back on that subject about the inspection reports. I know you gave a spreadsheet, but I'm looking for the actual reports, if that can be compiled together, please.
We have actual copies so that we can get those to you.
Yeah, and thanks for sending that information, but that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, we can get them a copy of the actual report.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. City Manager, anything else?
That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, Madam Clerk, it's your agenda. Hit your button.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For the clerk's agenda, item 1 is a resolution excusing Councilor Kogel.
Motion second to approve. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, motion second to receive the minutes. All in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Next, we have board appointments. We have council appointments that are ready for confirmation. The Animal Control Advisory Board, Ms. Nancy Anderson was nominated to succeed Ms. Jane Dunn.
All right, there's a motion second to confirm. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? She's confirmed.
Board of Health, Dr. Bantwell Baliga was nominated to succeed Dr. James Lopez.
All right, motion second to confirm. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, she's confirmed.
Next, have one upcoming board appointment. That's the Historic and Architectural Review Board. These are council's appointment. There is one recommendation from the Liberty Culture Center, Inc., and I believe council is aware that this organization is no longer in existence. So the council may decide to make this appointment as they so choose to do so. Lastly, Mr. Mayor, we have a council hearing. This is a request for a refund of property tax as submitted by Mr. Will White. This is on behalf of Ms. Elizabeth Hurd. It's for 2 properties located at 7636 Schaumburg Road and 7381 Blackman Road. And Mr. Mayor, I would defer to the city attorney to facilitate this hearing.
All right, thank you, Clerk Davis. This is a hearing application for a refund under OCGA 485380 filed by Mr. White on behalf of property for Ms. Elizabeth Hurd. We're going to let him go first and make his case for his refund, and then we'll hear from the chief appraiser and the attorney for the Board of Tax Assessors. And then council can make a decision today or take the matter under advisement until the next meeting.
Mr. White, welcome.
Clifton, thank you. I brought a summary. Can I pass this out, Clifton, for everyone?
Sure.
Thank you. Good morning. I represent my mother, Elizabeth Hurd, regarding a refund of ad valorem taxes for the past 3 years on 2 parcels of property that she owns. Specifically, I am requesting a refund of the cost difference in property taxes that were charged on these 2 parcels compared to the taxes that should have been assessed under the conservation use valuation during the tax years 2020, 2021, 2022. Elizabeth Hurd's conservation use valuation application was inaccurately denied by the tax assessors during these years. Unfortunately, despite meeting all of the necessary criteria for the conservation use, the application was denied by the tax assessors in each of the previously mentioned years. The CUVA is geared toward and intended to benefit bona fide conservation use property. The statute is clear in defining this type of property under the OCGA 41-5-7-4E3, effective July 1, 2004, to include property that exceeds 10 acres and left in its natural state. Such property and use qualifies wildlife habitat under this code section and is thus eligible for CUVA. This reading of the statute is not at all inconsistent with the property being zoned GC or RO. Zoning is no barrier to entering CUVA. It's the use that matters. There's no verbiage in the GC or RO zoning classification which prevents one from leaving 10 plus acres in its natural state. And if you're willing to leave it in such state for 10 years, then you qualify for CUVA. GC and RO allow for the use of the subject properties as wildlife habitat by maintaining the subject properties in its natural state. Therefore, the CUVA statute does not by its terms disqualify property that is zoned commercial. Putting commercial property in a CUVA seems to advance the conservation or environmental ideals behind CUVA better than putting a piece of property in the hinterlands with no development potential in a CUVA. Why should we give a landowner a tax break for not developing property that has no development potential? The CUVA statute does not require a landowner to develop their property, and a property owner can certainly leave his property in its natural state. Under the CUVA statute, leaving more than 10 acres in its natural state qualifies for CUVA regardless of its zoning classification. For a property to be considered wildlife habitat should not be a difficult standard to meet. The statute essentially allows this standard to be met by keeping 10 plus acres in its natural state for 10 years. The statute does not require any improvements or betterments to the property. I asked Kenny Colson, Senior Manager of the Georgia Department of Revenue, via email if I needed to rezone my property from RO to RE10. His response was the CUVA statute has always directed ownership and current use as a qualifying criteria. In addition, Kenny Colson says, I have stated numerous times in my continuing education classes and also on multiple phone calls with taxpayers and assessors that CUVA requires two things: a qualified owner that owns the property, 10 years of qualified use of the same property, and the property be continuously devoted to conservation use. There is a question, and this may come up, about zoning on the CUVA application, but its purpose, per Kenny Colson, is to notify the assessor that there may be a possible change of use to occur after the initial approval of CUVA. Per Kenny Colson, in the email to another Muskogee County ad valorem taxpayer with similar concerns as ours, zoning, and I quote, zoning is not a qualifying condition for CUVA. I respectively petition Columbus City Council to initiate the process for a refund at the cost difference in ad valorem taxes that we should have been entitled to under the conservation use valuation. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions around the table for Mr. White?
Councilor Cram?
Thank you. What's the amount of taxes we're looking at here?
The total difference is approximately $82,000
$82,000.
for the 3 years on both parcels. We did appear before the Board of Equalization last Wednesday on one of these parcels, and they did approve CUVA on that parcel.
On one but not both?
I was just in front of the board on one of them. I was not in
You
front
have to
of the
do them
board on-
separately?
It depends on how the schedule is. We appeal, we pay a lot of taxes. And We
Thank you.
probably have, I don't know how many tax bills we have, 500. So we appeal a reasonable number. I'm going to the Board of Equalization December 6th, I think, on 11 parcels at one time. But it's just how they schedule it. Now, they have turned us down before, previously. This was a year ago. After that time, I spoke with Kenny Carlson. I hopefully cleared it up in the Board of Equalization last Wednesday. They seemed to agree with me, and they voted unanimously that it should be in Cuba.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen.
Mr. White, one of the properties you just described or that were approved by in Cuba, are they one of the properties we're talking about today?
Yes, one of the properties was approved by the Board of Equalization for Cuba last Wednesday.
Okay. Do you feel it would be appropriate for us to ask for a third party to look at this?
I think it would be very appropriate to ask for a third party, hopefully an attorney, to review the law. I think it would save the city money. It would save us money and a lot of time. I have had an attorney look at it, but of course he's my attorney. So I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Well, I would like to hear from the assessor, and then council will talk about the third party in just a few minutes.
Okay.
But unless somebody else has any questions.
Any more questions for Mr. White?
Just for clarification, just to let everybody know, I apologize, Mayor. The property that Mr. White has in question are in Council District 6. One of them is, the topography is just not conducive to development. It's just an area, a wetland area, not a wetland, but it's a very hilly area. The other piece of property is across the street from Blackman Road Walmart grocery store. And I believe that's where the driving range is, and it's a very hilly type area.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Okay, so anyway, in my opinion, it's not a really developable piece of property because of terrain. So I think the CUVA is the appropriate category for it. But I still would like to hear from the assessor, Mr. White. I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Ms. Whitehouse, Mr. Kimmer, y'all go ahead and present what you have.
So I'm not really sure where to start, so I'll just start at the very beginning. In 2020, Ms. Hurd filed for conservation use on 2 properties. One of the properties had a medical office building on it. That automatically prevents it from being in conservation use. That is not a qualifying use of a property. It was a medical office building. It was zoned general commercial and has a medical office building on it. That eliminated his application. He appealed the decision. It went to the Board of Equalization. The Board of Equalization sided with the Board of Tax Assessors. He appealed to Superior Court on behalf of his mother. We held a mandatory settlement conference, and he failed to pay his certification to continue his appeal on to Superior Court. That was 2020 for one of the properties. The other property was also denied in 2020 because it did not have a qualifying use on the property. Now, I think it's very important that we point out the selective reading of the emails from Kenny Colson. So he referenced an email from another taxpayer who had questioned the zoning, and that was a situation of a renewal covenant. So the taxpayer already had conservation use, and then the UDO changed the zoning, and we said, your zoning has changed, you can't have it. Kenny came back and said, hey, he was already in it, needs to be grandfathered situation. That was addressed with planning and zoning and We went through and rezoned a whole bunch of properties. It was all brought to council for rezoning. There was 100 and some odd properties that ended up getting rezoned to address that issue so it would not be an issue going forward. There is a difference between an initial conservation use and a renewal conservation. Okay, there are different requirements for the two. The category of wildlife, which is the category that Mr. White is trying to stand on for his conservation use, is a renewal category only. And there is an email from Kenny Colson. Mr. White had specifically asked, he said to Kenny, "Thank you for your time. One more question. Do you agree with me that my property, which is currently zoned commercial for over 30 years and not currently in CUVA, is eligible for a CUVA if I leave the property in its natural state for wildlife habitat, even though the subject property is zoned commercial?" So that was an email that Mr. White sent to Kenny Colson, and he specifically asked the question. Now, Kenny responded, and I know Kenny very well, Mr. Colson, to the point where I'm on first name basis with him. And his response is, okay, I thought you had a renewal instead of a brand new covenant, because it makes a difference. He said, when first applying for CUVA, the property must be otherwise qualified using one of the listed uses of paragraph A1E in the code section. Now, when you renew, paragraph A1E, the types of uses that we have are things like raising, harvesting, storing of crops, feeding, breeding, and managing of livestock and poultry, producing plants, trees, fowls, or animals, including the production of fish. And then it goes on, it mentions wildlife, but there's another section, paragraph A.1, which clears up the wildlife issue, because it says, notwithstanding any other provision, and that word notwithstanding is incredibly important, because that word notwithstanding is basically saying this paragraph is going to take precedent over that previous description. And it says, when an owner seeks to renew the covenant, then they can have as their primary use wildlife. But they have to have already been in conservation use and had a primary use that met one of the others, the raising, storing, harvesting, livestock, crops, those kind of things. They have to have already had that. And then after a full 10-year period of a primary use, then and only then can wildlife become their primary use according to the code section. And Kenny even went on, if this is a new covenant, I recommend to use one of the primary uses listed in 1, 2, 3, or 4 and list wildlife habitat as a secondary use. The problem that Ms. Hurd runs into is the fact that she doesn't have a primary qualifying use. Okay? She doesn't have it. All she has is wildlife. The property sits in its natural state. There is no primary qualified use. The very first paragraph of this code section says that this is for the good faith production of agricultural product. And some of the things that we on the Board of Assessors have to consider is we have to consider the merchantability of the product, the nature of the terrain, the density of the parcel and its ability to produce product. We have to take those into consideration in making a determination on an initial conservation use. And he does not have that primary qualifying use. And I will say this, that the decision of the Board of Equalization from last week is already being appealed to Superior Court, and it will be, we're going to request that it be consolidated with the existing appeal that's already out there from 2022. And another thing, when we talk about the properties in question, one of the properties was rezoned in 2015 at the request of Ms. Hurd. And at the time that it was rezoned, we were provided with plats and proposed zoning of it and what they planned on putting into the property. This is developable property. that's being left in its natural state until they're ready to develop it. This is not property that is not suitable for development. They have a development plan already ready, written, and ready to go as soon as they're ready to pull the trigger.
Suzanne, there's been a request from council to, as you go through this, if you would identify the properties.
Oh,
if that's
I'm sorry,
possible.
absolutely.
That's okay, if you could identify which property you're talking about.
So this particular one is the Schaumburg Road property.
Okay, thank you.
So the history on this, to go back to the history, 2020, she applied for CUVA on both properties. She was denied. They didn't have the qualifying use. They appealed to Superior Court, they appealed to BOE, went to BOE, BOE sided with Board of Assessors. They appealed to Superior Court, we held a settlement conference, no resolution was reached, they failed to certify. They appealed again in 2021, and in 2021, we denied them, again, no qualifying use. There's two reasons for denial, the no qualifying use and the zoning, there's two reasons, but they were denied. They appealed to the BOE and then withdrew their appeal. So they had the opportunity to continue this on, they chose not to, they withdrew. In 2022, they again applied for conservation use. They were again denied. It went to the BOE sided with the Board of Assessors. They appealed to Superior Court. We held a settlement conference, no resolution was reached, and it is now in Superior Court. Our argument is that with them withdrawing their appeals, failing to certify their appeals for the years 20 and 21, they have foreclosed that right. The law states that when it comes to an exemption, that if there's any ambiguity, any question, then it has to side with the tax assessor. Taxation is the rule, exemption is the exception. The burden of proof falls to the taxpayer. They have the burden to prove that they have a qualifying use, and they failed to do so for the years 20 and 21. For 22, this is not the correct forum. It's currently in court. When the court decides if he should prevail in court, there is mechanism in place for a refund for the year 2022. But they foreclosed the option for 21 and 20 when they failed to continue their appeals, because the burden fell to them and they failed to meet that burden. And there is case law out there that says that when there are covenants that are restrictive, that would preclude the use of the property in one of those qualifying uses, that it's proper for the law to be strictly construed to the favor of the Board of Assessors and to deny the use of covenant, of the conservation use. There is case law out there that supports that. And the state legislature saw fit to give you, the governing authority for this county, the ability to restrict the use of property for zoning. And when somebody has property that is zoned that will not allow a qualifying use, they are not going to qualify for conservation use. You have the right to say, and I'm going to use an extreme example, you have the right to say, hey, that particular property that's zoned RE1 can't have a pig farm on it because it's in a residential neighborhood. A pig farm is a qualifying use. It would technically meet the qualifications for a conservation use application. But zoning says you can't do that. And that's okay. That means that if somebody came to me with an application for conservation use and said, my qualifying use is going to be a pig farm, I'm going to deny that because they can't have that in that use under that zoning. So that's where we stand at this point. He does not have a qualifying use. Ms. Hurd does not have a qualifying use on either one of these properties for an initial conservation application.
Which parcel is in Superior Court right now?
Both.
Both?
That's
Both.
for 22, right?
For 2022.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen, hang on, let me get back to you. There we go.
I just wanted to clarify the piece of property on the north side of the parkway that we talked about earlier. I think
That's the Schaumburg Road property.
the Schaumburg Road property, as I said earlier, is pretty much undevelopable. The tax assessor has said it is developable, but I think if you'll ride by there, you'll see that part of it that backs up to the neighborhood could be developed, but down the hill, there's a creek and a drainage area, basin, and it's not gonna be developed. So I just want to clarify for council that your statement that it's developable is not totally accurate. Part of it can be developed, but not the.
That's not my opinion. That's Mr. White's opinion. That's Ms. Hurd's opinion. This is their rezoning application that they submitted with council in 2015.
I appreciate your comments. I just wanted to clarify for council.
And this is their development plan that they drew up.
Can I respond to some of these?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
When you do a rezoning, that is before you do engineering. And it was rezoned, then we started the engineering, and we have state waters all through that project. You have to stay
If you'd speak into the mic.
You have
I'm
to
sorry.
stay 50 feet off of where vegetation has been rested, and there's very little we could do. So that picture doesn't really mean anything. Several other things. Qualifying use. In 2004, according to the Georgia Code, Clifton is 48-5-7-.4E3. Said was amended to provide that property may be eligible for conservation use tax assessment if it is used without limitation for the production of fish or wildlife by maintaining not less than 10 acres of wildlife habitat, either in its natural state or under management. So you can. And zoning is not a qualifying criteria. I've read Pender's backwards and forwards. I can't find it anywhere where it says zoning is a qualifying criteria. The only two things that where you qualify for CUVA, that's that you own the property and you're gonna leave it in its natural state for 10 years, period. That's it. There's no other definition. And as far as the city's UDO zoning, the city cannot pass a zoning ordinance that supersedes state law. So you just can't do it. And state law says that zoning is not a qualifying criteria. It just says that there are two things that you need to do to qualify for CUVA. In fact, in this section, code Clifton 48-5-7.4Z, the governing authority of a county shall not publish or promulgate any information which is inconsistent with the provisions of this chapter. Period. That just reinforces city cannot supersede state law. Going back to the property that we had that was, at one time, it was on a tax plat with a medical office building. And we wanted to put our approximate 10.5 acres on CUVA, and I can't remember what year. I don't think it was 2020. When we went to the city and we said, we want this in CUVA, what do we need to do? They said, you need to separately plat the 10.5 acres. So that's what we did, and then we were denied. So I don't think 2020 is correct, but I don't have my plat in front of me.
Thank you, Mr. White. Had a couple other counselors with questions. Counselor Crabb?
Thank you. So that was the question I had, because I'm looking at a map here. And so is the medical facility replatted, and that's not part of the 10.5 acres that you're talking about for the 7381 Blackman Road?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Davis?
Mr. White, just the aspect of you being a developer, anytime you have property out there, I mean, you always, I would suspect that in your mind, you're always planning ahead, envisioning and trying to understand use and drawing site plans and doing things, but a lot of that could be speculation until you determine if it could be done or not. Do you do that on a regular basis with a lot of your properties, and then at the end of the day, you can determine if it can be developed or not?
Yes, we do that, and if it can be developed, when it can be developed.
And I would think that if you make a commitment for a 10-year period, that you determine that you can't develop it.
That is correct.
I have a couple of questions for Ms. Widenhouse. There seems to be a lot of talk about no qualifications for zoning or zoning classifications, categories. You mentioned the medical use. You said there's no use on the land, but can you speak to that a little bit more in depth on that aspect of it?
There's no qualifying use. Okay, there's an initial conservation use covenant and there's a renewal conservation use covenant. If you are in a renewal, wildlife can be your primary use. Renewal only. If it's an initial conservation use, it has to have another qualifying use. That has to be an agricultural product that's actually produced on that property. And that's where he doesn't meet those qualifications. If it's a renewal, and that's what the law says, 48.5, 7.4, paragraph A.1 states, let's see if I have it in here. I'm pretty sure I do. Bear with me 1 second while I pull it out. Notwithstanding any other provision of this code section to the contrary, in the case of property which otherwise meets the requirements for current use assessment and the qualifying use is pursuant to division 1E3 of subsection A of this code section, when the owner seeks to renew the covenant or re-enter a covenant subsequent to the termination of a previous covenant, which met such requirements, and the owner meets the qualifications under this code section, but the property is no longer being used for the qualified use for which the previous covenant was entered pursuant to division 1E3 of subsection A of this code section. The property is not, and the property is not environmentally sensitive property within the meaning of paragraph 2 of subsection A. And the primary use of the property is maintenance of wildlife habitat of not less than 10 acres, either by maintaining the property in its natural condition or under management. Then the County Board of Tax Assessors shall be required to accept such use as a qualifying use for the purposes of this code section. That is for renewal only.
Well,
So
it seems like there's a conflict around the interpretation of the opinions here, and I mean, Mr. White has said that he meets, or his mother meets the guidelines and regulations outlined by the state, and they've done everything they need to do based on the criteria for a conservation use. I mean, that's his position, but wouldn't, for the sake of the community enjoying the last 10 years of the environmental commitment, I know it's in Councilor Allen's district, it's a very beautiful place there, and it's always been, I mean, people really enjoy it, and preserving that and that commitment to the conservation there, wouldn't that be considered?
no,
use in it?
because
What?
the conservation, it's actually.
Wouldn't that be the purpose of the conservation?
No, the current use valuation assessment, CUVA, is designed to protect the small family farm. That was its purpose, was to protect the small family farm. It's not about protecting green space. It was about protecting the small family farm, and that's why it requires the good faith production, paragraph 1, the good faith production of an agricultural product from the land. That's what is required. That is the #1 requirement for conservation use for this CUVA program. It's about protecting the small family farm. That's the whole purpose. That was why it was created and written. If you are looking to preserve land from a conservation standpoint, then yes, there are conservation easement programs out there that you can in fact deed your property into a conservation easement. The reason nobody wants to do it, you get a great big tax break on it, but nobody wants to do it because then it's permanent. It's a permanent easement. So, but the initial purpose and the initial intent of the legislature at the time that the conservation use program was created was to protect the small family farm in the 130-plus rural counties in the state of Georgia.
And let me just say, would I be right in saying, I know that may be a premise that you're basing the opinion upon, but are there CUVAs right now that are not acting as farms or
Yes.
being used as farms, but they're still CUVAs?
Yes.
They don't really have a product.
They are
But
renewals.
they're preserving.
They are renewals. You have to have that, you have to have that initial qualifying use. That's what paragraph 8.1 tells us, is that you have to have an initial qualifying use. You have to have an initial product that you're creating.
Is that, what would be those products? Is that just Muskogee County, the opinion of Muskogee County?
No.
Or is it surrounding counties with,
This
what
is
would be their product?
the storing, raising, hang on, let me read it out to you. Raising, harvesting, and storing of crops. Feeding, breeding, managing of livestock or poultry. Producing plants, trees, fowls, or animals. Without limitation, production of fish. And then it talks about the wildlife, that's the secondary, that's covered in paragraph 8.1, which supersedes this. Production of aquaculture, horticulture, floriculture, forestry, dairy, livestock, poultry, and apiary products. Apiary products are bees. And then there is a portion, a very small portion of this, which does cover land conservation, but this is for environmentally sensitive areas, and it requires an annual certification from the EPD.
Well, is that, I mean, some of those categories you read, is that not what's happening here?
No, this is land, it's in a natural state, it produces no product. And one of the codes, part of the CUVA code section that I'm required to consider, zoning is one of them. Zoning is covered in this chapter. It's 48.5.2 covers zoning, and it says that one of the 7 things that I have to consider on all property is zoning, first and foremost. And the code sections stack on top of each other, so they're not gonna mention zoning again later on, but it's covered in chapter 48.5, it's 48.5.2. 48.5.7.4 specifically covers conservation use. And it says we have to have some kind of a product. And in the conservation use section of 7.4, it mentions that I have to consider the marketability of the product produced, the density of the product produced, the nature of the terrain, and whether it can produce a product. I have to consider those things. And there's nothing there for me to consider because there is no product being produced on this property.
I think there lies the argument.
And it's not, even trees are not being produced. It's in its natural state. There's no harvesting. There's no forestry management plan. There's no, this is not a planted pine section where he's raising trees. This isn't planted sweet gum for railroad ties or planted pine for paper mills or the pine straw. There's not, it's just a natural state. It's a property that is undeveloped. It's just sitting there. It's not being utilized for anything.
Well, I think there lies the argument of the opinion, and I know Councilor Allen mentioned earlier about a third-party opinion to provide clarity. That may be exactly.
And I think we'll get that in 2022's case once it's finally decided in Superior Court.
Yeah, but I personally have problems with what it takes, the burden that's being placed on property owners, homeowners, things like that, to have to go through those. A lot of people can't do it. They can't defend it. A lot of people can't defend themselves.
Okay, so
And it just costs a lot of money to go through that process, and it's painful, and a lot of people can't defend themselves. I personally have a problem with that philosophy.
So, Counselor Davis, when you
I
request an
understand the
exemption, the
process,
burden
ma'am.
of
I
proof falls to the
understand.
taxpayer to prove their case, and they have failed to do so.
I understand the process. I'm just presenting my feelings on the way I view that, okay? It's a very painful process. For people to go through that. It's demanding, it's a burden. And if there's a better way to work that out, which, provide and shed light and clarification on this, that it's in front of us now, that might be the appropriate way to handle it at this point. And, we can get a better understanding of it. But I understand both sides of the arguments. I hear you. I mean, it's.
So I have to look at the case law and what the case law tells me I need to do. Because I have to follow the letter of the law, and it has to be, when it's an exemption, which is what this is a request for an exemption, it has to be very tightly construed, because taxation is the rule and the exemption is the exception. And it has to be, the code section, the law states the code section must be tightly construed to the favor of the Board of Tax Assessors when it comes to exemptions, because it is the exception. And the burden of proof falls to the taxpayer. And he has a burden to produce a product in order to qualify for a conservation use, and he is not producing a product. So that's where we are with this. It is at the Superior Court level for 2022. He failed to follow his appeals. Now, in 2020, the medical office building was still on the parcel. He didn't remove that until 2021. And that's the Blackman Road parcel. So that parcel wasn't going to qualify any way, shape, or form. It had a medical office building. That was its use. It was as a medical office facility. And that property was not removed. The medical office building was not platted out until 2021 tax year.
We have a number of counselors, I think, that have other questions as well. Counselor Begley?
I guess when I do go visit the Georgia agritourism site, I mean, it does mention without CUVA, many farm operations couldn't afford to stay on the land, but it does say the environmental benefits of keeping land in green space, preventing urban sprawl and overdevelopment. I'm also trying to find the exact language around the initial qualifying use, because I'm looking at 48.5.7.4, and this is from another county, but I guess my short question, can you repeat
It's
the exact?
48.5.7.4.
48.5. All right, let me research a little bit more, see if I can find more specific language.
All right,
Yeah,
Counselor Thomas?
so it's 48.5.7.4, Section A, 1E, is where it lists out the qualifying uses for the initial.
Counselor Thomas?
And then 8.1 covers the renewal, and where it says that wildlife can be a primary use.
We'll come back to Counselor Begley.
Mr. Mayor, I have two questions. One, I have a question of our city attorney. If we, whatever way this council votes on this issue, the parcel that's in Superior Court, does that negate what we approve, or how does that work?
No, but the the point being that both parcels are in Superior Court now, as I understand it. If the Superior Court were to rule that they are entitled to a conservation use for the year 2022, then they would receive a refund for that year. And I would think this body would want to wait until we get an adjudication on the issue of 2022. Now, 21 and 2020, you've heard the appraiser's position that they waive the rights to further appeal on that. That's something that you can debate today in an executive session if you want to, and make a decision on that, or they stand, those stand denied. But as to 2022, I'm advising this body, the governing authority, I would say wait and see what the Superior Court does on the issue of a refund. And if they say they're entitled to the difference in the value for conservation use, then that'll be the answer for 2022. They'll get a refund for 2022.
But then I think you could use that information in the 2021, and then you'd have another issue with the medical building not being platted out supposedly in 2020. So you'd really still have, you'd still have some.
Well, this body could do something, but that would be your decision,
No,
and
that's right.
You
But I'm just
want to
saying
discuss
that
it, whether you
if
go
the
back
Superior Court
previously.
determined that there was a refund, I would think this body would reconsider 21. And then you have a different question with regards to 20, because apparently it had that.
I also have one more thing to point
Wait,
out.
I'm not
Hang on
through.
just a second.
Okay.
I want to go back to what Mayor Pro Tem Allen suggested, that we have an independent third party take a look at this and give us some advice. The Superior Court, of course, is an independent third party and will give advice on that year. But there are other years, and I'd like for Mayor Pro Tem Allen to expand on that a little bit, if he can, about what you think a third party could do and how it could help us make that decision.
Thank you, Mayor. As I said earlier, the plat that was projected shows the entire piece of property. Only a part of it can be developed. I'm not a developer, but I'm guessing maybe half of it, because you've got, as Mr. White said, you've got terrain that's a drainage basin, and you can't build or knock down anything inside a 50-foot. So it's just undevelopable. I would like to, I hope council agrees, I would like a third party to come in. I think the city attorney can suggest 2 or 3 names, and we can select one from there.
Mayor Pro Tem, if you're saying a third party, what kind of qualifications would that third party need in order to make a recommendation to us? Does it need to be an attorney? Does it need to be a developer? Does it need to be all of the above? What do you look?
I'm guessing an attorney, probably an environmental lawyer, or someone that's familiar with development, real estate attorney, something like that. You know better what
That's
kind of-
doable. We know environmental attorneys, but, the question is, do you want to do that before the Superior Court makes a ruling?
Well, that was my next question, was what's the timeline on the?
Do you have any idea, Ms. Widenhouse, when they got, Mr. Kimmer,
Do we have any idea
So-
as far as the timeline on our case in Superior
on
Court?
getting a ruling on?
We're still in the discovery period, and I think it's gonna come down to summary judgment motions sometime in the spring.
Are they consolidated cases with one judge?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and one other thing that needs to be noted is Mr. White.
Please,
just
Ms.
making-
Weidenauer, would you let us continue our conversation?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I would support our bringing in a third party, for one thing, just to make sure that we are all on the same page and we know what we're talking about. We know what all the ins and outs are, and if it's appropriate, Mr. Mayor, at this time, I would make that motion, that we do that in conjunction with the city attorney's recommendation to us.
And that's prior to the Superior Court case.
I think that by saying in conjunction with the city attorney's recommendation to us, that could certainly be part of his recommendation to us.
I would second that motion, Mayor, and I think it's been described that you gotta have a property that's producing a product, but I think it was clear that producing a product includes forestry type environment, just trees sitting there. I mean, we have them all over the rural area of Columbus. They're not producing corn or anything else. It's just trees growing, and that's what's going on here. But I would second the motion.
There is. You want to hit your light? Well, Councilor Begley, is that to the motion? Is your comment to the motion?
I'll make one comment and then comment on the motion. I think it'll support.
Well, okay.
I mean, when I'm at 48.5.7 4E, I mean, it does say producing plants, trees, et cetera. or wildlife by maintaining at less than 10 acres of wildlife habitat either in its natural state or under management, which I think we're saying it is the natural state. We've heard the natural state several times. So obviously I'm an attorney, so I'm happy to defer to attorney to review and support the motion.
That was not the option that was requested in 2020 and 2021, though.
All right, just let's hear from the other councilors on the motion, and regardless how the motion turns out, you'll still be able to provide any input. Councilor Crabb?
You earlier said something about a executive session. If we're planning on getting an outside legal advice, can we go into executive session to discuss the parameters of what we're hiring them to do?
What I've heard is you want the environmental attorney to just give you an opinion about what is a qualifying use and does wildlife qualify for an initial conservation use as opposed to a renewal. I mean, that's the issue. But
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of ambiguity at this point about what you would ask that attorney.
I think there's some ambiguity on, some other factors that we would want to take into consideration. Like, do we want to do, would we want to break down the years? Like maybe, give him a partial relief for some years based on, or no relief for some years based on the replatting of the medical facility, different scenarios that were discussed here today. I mean, I don't know.
I don't think you would want to have an executive session with regard to those issues until you get a ruling on the tax year 22 out of Superior Court. Then we could discuss all 3 years in executive session if you want to, based on what the judge has ruled. So that's why I said I think I would wait, and we can spend money and get an opinion from an environmental attorney before the court rules if you want to, but you don't have to.
Well, my concern about waiting for a ruling is I noticed over several years how these rulings in the tax assessor's office, the Board of Equalization, and the Superior Court get drug out for long periods of time. And I don't think that that's fair to the citizens. So, I mean, I know what she said about the rule of law, that it's supposed to go into the favor of the Board of Tax Assessors, but I think that that's burdensome on the citizens, and I don't like it one bit.
Again, that's a legislative matter, but we can get an opinion whenever the council directs us. We can go ahead and do it in the next couple of weeks.
Councilor Kogel, to the motion?
Yeah. Can you, with the third party, can we include the other properties that are within the city limits that fall under CUVA as a comparison?
Well, I think we want a general legal opinion on what a qualifying use entails, and does it entail wildlife on an initial application? That's the core issue, and we'll be glad to get an opinion on that. I don't think we want to go into other hypotheticals.
I'd just be interested in knowing what other properties fall under it.
Yeah, it's an interesting deal. I mean, obviously, we start thinking about from our non-legal perspective, if you've got a natural area, I tend to think of that as a conservation area, ought to apply. But the challenge is we hire incredibly intelligent people to know the law and to tell us what the law says our capabilities are. So that's why I think I would prefer through the Superior Court, but as long as we get some kind of legal opinion, because we've got two different assertions on what a CUVA will allow as a qualifying purpose for the initial covenant. And until we satisfy that, I think it's any movement to waive the penalties would be probably premature, at least in my mind. So there is a motion and a second. We had a recommendation from the city attorney to let it go to Superior Court, but there is a motion and a second to hire a third-party individual
We'll
recommended.
get an opinion from an environmental lawyer on the qualifying use
All right.
criteria. Does wildlife only allow you to qualify on an initial application as opposed to a renewal?
I don't think it's just wildlife.
Yeah, I think it's in its natural state. I think,
Yeah,
I think,
All right.
the-
We'll
ask if there's any condition that would
they'll look
fit.
at the whole
There
landscape.
you go. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll send it to a third party. Ms. Whitehouse?
So the one point that I had wanted to make was that his 2020 and 2021 applications, wildlife wasn't his selected category that he was trying to qualify with. The applications, what he asked for 20 and 21, he said that his qualifying use was the production of aquaculture, horticulture, floriculture, forestry, dairy, livestock, poultry, and apiary products, 100% on both properties. That was what he said his qualifying use was for 2020 and 2021. So, and that was the application that was submitted to us on both properties for both years. He didn't have those. That was what he applied for. We denied it, rightfully so.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. White, do you have a response?
Suzanne conveniently leaves out the fact that's what we were told to check the box by the tax assessor's office, and we did a timber management plan per their request that we submitted. We hired a professional to do it, and then they turned it down and said we had the wrong box or the zoning wasn't right or whatever it is. But that's what we were told to do. So we're just trying to do what we were told to do, to have Cuba to leave the property in its natural state for 10 years.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. All right, well, I guess there'll be no action taken by this council until the.
Right, we'll get an opinion, and then hopefully in the next couple of weeks, you can decide whether you want to wait on Superior Court or not.
Okay. All right. Well, thank all of you for being here to provide the information necessary to get through this. Is there any, Madam Clerk, is there any other business that we have that needs to come before the council?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor, that concludes our agenda.
All right. Well, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.